In 1981, Renault controlled Europe's trucks. The company took over Dunstable, Britain's historic truck factory. For the first time, Renault had a foothold in the British market. The opportunity was perfect, the investment was real, the dream was clear: dominate Britain like they dominated France. Instead, within 11 years, they fled. This is how Renault's British dream died. Renault's truck story began in 1956, when the company created Saviem. This wasn't a new company. Saviem was the combination of three operations: Renault's own truck division, Somua, and Latil. Saviem became the brand name for all Renault trucks and buses from 1957 onward. For 2 decades, Saviem built solid trucks. The company competed across Europe, but Saviem was just one player in a crowded market. Volvo and Scania were growing in Scandinavia. Mercedes was building strength in Germany. DAF was powerful in the Netherlands. Saviem needed to become something bigger. In 1975, the French government executed a strategic move. The state-owned Renault acquired Berliet from Michelin. Berliet was another French truck and bus manufacturer with its own history and reputation. This wasn't consolidation for efficiency, this was consolidation for power. 3 years later, in 1978, Berliet and Saviem merged. The new entity was called Renault Véhicules Industriels, abbreviated RVI. The company kept the old brand names for 2 years. By 1980, everything became Renault. The message was clear. France now had a single, unified truck manufacturer. RVI controlled the entire French truck market. No competitor could match its scale. The company had production facilities across France. Renault engines powered every truck. The company was state-owned, which meant government backing and long-term strategy. But France alone wasn't enough. Renault needed Europe. In 1971, before the Berliet acquisition, Saviem joined something called the Club of Four. This was a cooperation agreement between 4 European truck makers: Saviem, Volvo, DAF, and Majoris Deutz. These companies agreed to share development of medium-sized trucks. From 1975 onward, trucks built under this agreement came from Saviem and later Renault. These vehicles were sold across Europe. They appeared in North America as the Mack Midliner. The cooperation proved that Renault could compete at the highest level. But the real opportunity came in Britain. In 1978, the British market was fragmented. Bedford, Leyland, Foden, and ERF were struggling independent manufacturers. The government was propping up British Leyland with taxpayer money. The industry was fractured. Renault saw an opening. The moment arrived in 1978 when PSA Group bought Chrysler's European operations. PSA included Peugeot and Citroën. The deal included the United Kingdom and Spain. The brand name was Dodge. In Britain, the company had the historic Dunstable plant. This was the home of Commer Trucks, a British legend that stretched back decades. PSA wasn't interested in trucks. The company focused on vans and light commercial vehicles. Commercial trucks were a different business. They were heavy, complex, and required dedicated investment. PSACO Jacques Calvet made a decision: sell the truck operations to someone who cared. That someone was Renault. In July 1981, Renault took a 50% stake in Carrier Motors, the truck division of Peugeot. The company was still called Carrier Motors at this point, carrying the heritage of the Roots Group, but Renault had its foot in the door. By 1983, Renault had achieved complete control. Suddenly, Renault owned a British factory outright. The Dunstable plant became the centre of Renault's UK ambitions. The company gained the heritage of Commer and Carrier, brands British operators had known for decades. This was the pivot point. Renault didn't just have French factories now. Renault had a factory in Britain. The company could produce trucks in the British market, ship them to British operators, and claim they were British built. This was politically powerful and commercially attractive. Before the acquisition, Renault had already started a partnership at Dunstable. In 1980, PSA partnered with RVI to produce medium-sized trucks at the Commer plant. The arrangement was simple. Renault supplied the cab, Commer supplied the chassis, and Saviem supplied the engines. The result was the Dodge 50 series. In 1983, a major strike erupted over the Dodge Commando 2. British workers protested the way French management was stifling British R&D while favouring the French G series. This wasn't just a labour dispute, It represented a fundamental tension. Was this a British company or a French company? Workers feared their jobs depended on French decisions. Operators feared French management didn't understand British needs. The strike lasted weeks. Production stopped. British operators lost faith. They ordered Mercedes instead. They ordered Volvo. They ordered Scania. Once customers switched, bringing them back was nearly impossible. Despite the partnership problems, Renault bought the Dodge operations. The company believed integration at Dunstable could be better under complete RVI control. No more sharing decisions with PSA. No more divided priorities. Renault would run Dunstable. Renault would dominate Britain. The strategy was ambitious. RVI had succeeded in France. Why not in Britain? The company invested in the plant. Renault modern production techniques were imported. French management arrived. The Dunstable facility could produce 50,000 trucks annually if operating at capacity. Potential was enormous. From 1983 to 1986, Renault tried to build market presence. The company produced the Dodge 50 series under the Renault brand. Quality improved, production stabilized, market share never materialized. British operators bought what they knew. They trusted what had worked before. Renault was new. Renault was French. Renault wasn't prestigious like Volvo or Scania. The partnership with PSA dissolved in 1986. PSA focused on vans. Renault took the heavy-duty trucks exclusively. This should have given Renault more control. Instead, it isolated Renault further. The company was now solely responsible for a loss-making operation in a hostile market. Through the late 1980s, Renault Truck Industries struggled. The company had renamed operations RTI to rebrand after the failed partnership. But a name change couldn't change the market reality. British operators preferred established brands. Renault prices were high because French production costs were high. Quality was good, but good wasn't enough to overcome indifference. By the early 1990s, the situation became critical. In 1991, RTI recorded a pre-tax loss of £18.6 million. This wasn't a small loss. This was catastrophic for a truck manufacturer in a depressed market. The following year, 1992, the final blow came. RTI's share of the United Kingdom market, above 3.5 tons gross vehicle weight, had fallen by nearly 24%. By year-end, Renault held just 4.1% of the market. In a country where the company had invested millions, they controlled barely 4%. Renault executives faced reality. The Dunstable plant was operating at 12% capacity. The assembly line could produce 20 midliner trucks daily. Instead, it was producing 7 trucks daily, not even every day. Workers stood idle. Equipment gathered dust. The losses accelerated. European emissions regulations added the final pressure. Euro 1 standards required cleaner engines. The Dodge 50 series was aging. Meeting emissions would require re-engineering the cab floor. This meant investing millions more into a truck nobody wanted. But there was another reason Renault gave up. In 1990, Renault released the Magnum, a revolutionary flat-floor cab truck built in France. The Magnum was a massive hit across Europe. It proved to Renault that they didn't need the Dunstable factory to sell trucks in the United Kingdom. French production could serve the entire British market. The Dunstable facility wasn't just unprofitable, it was unnecessary. Renault calculated the economics. Investment to update the Dodge 50 for Euro 1, production at 12% capacity, market share at 4.1%, losses of £18.6 million annually, a modern French alternative truck already proving successful. The answer was inevitable. In December 1992, Renault announced closure of the Dunstable plant. The decision was final. Production would transfer to France. Right-hand drive trucks would be built in France and shipped to the United Kingdom. The historic Dunstable plant, home to Comma trucks, would become an import centre and administrative office. The closure meant the loss of 280 jobs on the production line. Skilled workers who had built trucks for decades would be retrained or retired. The plant that had operated for generations would be reduced to a warehouse and office. Bernard Momin, RTI's boss, was realistic about the future. Even without the cost of British production, survival wasn't guaranteed. The market was depressed. Competition was fierce. Renault had lost the battle for British operators' loyalty. In July 1993, the last truck rolled off the Dunstable line. What had seemed like a golden opportunity in 1981 had become a painful failure in 1993. 12 years, millions of pounds invested, thousands of jobs affected, no return on investment. The story raises a question. Why did Renault fail when the company had resources, technology, and a modern factory? The answer lies in 5 factors. First, timing was wrong. When Renault arrived in 1981, British operators already preferred European alternatives. Mercedes trucks dominated premium long-haul. Volvo and Scania owned the Scandinavian reputation. DAF offered value. Renault offered complexity and foreign ownership. Second, integration failed. The 1983 strike symbolized the tension between French management and British workers. French systems didn't match British practices. French parts created import delays. French decision-making in France didn't account for British market conditions. Integration never became seamless. Third, the market was dying. British truck operators were buying fewer trucks. Mercedes was taking share. Volvo was taking share. Scania was taking share. The overall market was shrinking. Renault was trying to grow in a declining market against stronger competitors. Fourth, brand identity was weak. Renault was known for cars in Britain. The Renault 5 was a success. The Renault Clio became famous, but Renault trucks meant nothing to British operators. Comma meant history. Renault meant imported French trucks. The comma heritage was abandoned, not leveraged. Fifth, the product lacked prestige. In the 1980s and 1990s, British owner-operators wanted Volvo F10s and Scania 112s. Those were the trucks that gave drivers status and respect. Renault was viewed as a fleet truck bought in bulk by large companies and government departments. Fleet trucks have lower profit margins and less brand loyalty. Owner-operators saw Renault as beneath them, not as a premium choice worth paying for. Renault had the potential to rewrite Britain's truck industry. The company owned a modern factory. It had comma heritage. It had investment capital. It had technology and manufacturing expertise. If Renault had successfully integrated Dunstable, if the 1983 strike had been resolved, if market conditions had favoured French investment, Renault could have become a major British truck maker. From 1981 to 1993, Renault attempted to rewrite Britain's truck industry. The company acquired the historic Dunstable plant. It invested in production facilities. It brought technology and capital. It promised integration and growth. But rewriting an industry requires more than resources. It requires timing, cultural fit, and sustained commitment. Renault had resources. The timing was wrong. The cultural fit was poor. The commitment lasted only until losses became unbearable. By 1993, the dream was finished. Renault shifted to importing trucks from France. Dunstable became a warehouse. British truck manufacturing, already devastated by Mercedes and German competition, had lost another potential saviour. The irony is that Renault succeeded everywhere else. The company dominated France. RVI became a major European manufacturer. Renault trucks are common across the continent today. The trucks in Dunstable's parking lot today are shipped from France. The factory that once built British trucks builds nothing anymore. The industry that Renault nearly rewrote was rewritten instead by Mercedes, Volvo, and Scania. Renault's dream of British dominance remains exactly what it became: impossible.